By the way. Oh, we're recording.
We're recording. Hello,
Yay,
everybody.
hey.
Welcome. We're so excited. We were
I'm
just
so
talking.
excited to be here.
You guys, we're with our friend that if you've been with a wife like me, Shannon Geurin. She was our co-host on the A Wife Like Me podcast for a good year, right?
Mhm.
And we had so much fun
We
together.
did. I missed those times.
I know. Remember the one time, my favorite episode? If you have not heard this episode, I will link it. We were recording and Shannon was peeing and
Oh, yeah. Oh.
she's like, "Wait, are we recording right now?" And I was dying. I was like,
Didn't
"Yes,
you make that into like a bloopers episode or something?
yes."
Or did you put it in?
We kept it on the episode like right at the beginning. It is by far my favorite episode we have. I don't even remember what the episode was about,
So
but
fun.
that
Yeah.
it was so
Yeah.
great. So, yeah. So welcome, Shannon. Oh my
Thank you
land.
for having me.
Oh, thank you for being here. I was
So
just,
good to be here.
yes, I was thanking you before we push record because, as you all know, we are in a series on betrayal and infidelity. And I was telling Shannon that this conversation is so important. All of these conversations are so important. However, we've had women who were going to share their story of betrayal or infidelity who backed out for their own reasons, right? Maybe them or their husband decided, no, I don't feel comfortable with, our story being made public. And that is okay. However, we have to hear, we have to hear
Yeah.
other people's stories. We have to see the real hard, ugly truth. And we have to see the result of what is possible.
Mhm.
And so I just thank you for being willing to be courageous and brave and sharing with us as a Christian. I want to say that as a Christian woman who has walked through betrayal and infidelity, that you are willing to say, you know what, God is able to work amidst that, through that, and He is able to restore what has been broken. So
Yeah.
thank you for being
Amen.
here. Why don't you introduce yourself? Because there are new people here that maybe aren't familiar with who you are.
Yeah. So my name is Shannon Geurin, and I have been married to my wonderful husband, John, for it'll be 32 years next year.
Wow.
Yeah.
And
And I
you
have
look 32. This is the other thing. I was telling Shannon, I'm like, "Oh, I haven't seen you in so long, and I'm just staring at your beautiful face." If you're not watching on YouTube, you have to go over to YouTube because she has this beautiful color on her lips and this beautiful green
oh,
shirt
you're
with her
so
dark hair.
sweet.
Anyway, continue.
Yes. So we got married young. Um, so I have two daughters. Alex is 20, she'll be 25 next year, and then Avery will be 23 next year. No
Wow.
grandkids yet. No son-in-laws yet, but that's my goal. I don't know if it's their goal, but it's my goal.
That's awesome. And you
Yeah,
are involved in women's ministry at your
I I
church.
am. I stepped into leadership at our women on our women's team. We call it sisterhood at my church about, gosh, 3, maybe 4 years ago. Um, and I do so I volunteer. It's a volunteer position, and it takes up a lot of my time, and, I get to work with women and minister to women, and I love it. I really, really feel like, our pastor at our church talks about how when you're in your sweet spot in ministry, there's just nothing like it, and I
Mm.
really feel like I found my sweet spot. So,
Mm.
yeah.
I love that so much. I love that. And so, Shannon, you have a story of betrayal.
Yes, yes.
Why don't you talk to us about pre-betrayal,
Okay.
life, marriage before betrayal was a part of your story? What did it look like for you? Were you following Jesus? What did your marriage look like?
Yeah, so Amanda, I feel like I was born on the church pew.
Mm.
Um, I that's all I've ever known. All I've ever known is serving Jesus and, going to church and serving, in ministry. That's really all I've ever known. And, um, you know, infidelity was something that I never thought I would ever do. And so about 15 years ago, 16 years ago, we moved. My husband got a significant promotion at church. I mean, not at church, on his career, he got a significant promotion. And it was really his first significant promotion. And so we moved to Dallas. And it was, our girls were young and, we were excited. It was a very exciting time in our life and our family, God had just really blessed us. We lived in Oklahoma, and moving to Dallas was just, wow, just such an adventure. And we were just excited about it. And it was really hard. I really wasn't anticipating everything that you have to do when you literally uproot your family. Everything changes. And, John and I, our marriage was your normal marriage. We were busy raising kids. Um, you know, there was nothing off about our marriage. There was no red flags going on. It was just your normal, typical marriage. But when we moved, it was like a blow. And when I say it was like a blow, that doesn't mean that it was necessarily bad. It was just a big change for our family. And, John was in a season of, since he had gotten that promotion, he was, in a season of kind of proving himself. He was in new territory, and not that there's anything wrong with that, but he was just busy at work. And, I was busy trying to get my girls adjusted, getting our family adjusted, and the door was cracked open, and somebody started, paying attention to me and giving me compliments. And it started out as an emotional affair, and it morphed from there. But Amanda, we had a normal marriage. And I was your normal, I remember, I've told this story so many times before, and I think it's so important. I think it's a really important part of my story. But I remember being at Chick-fil-A with other moms, and while our kids were running around back when playgrounds were still a thing inside restaurants, and somebody close to us had just had an affair. And, we were sitting around the table talking about it. And I remember Amanda saying that I would never do that. I would never do that to my family. And I really, as small and tiny as that seems, that moment, as insignificant as that moment seems, that really gave the enemy room. He was like, we'll see about that.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so that's how it started. And again, my marriage was fine, other than just your normal things that marriages go through.
I think that's really important to highlight, because so often we can be not on guard because everything seems fine. There's nothing bad or big, or maybe like you and your husband aren't even that off in marriage. And that's kind of, it's such a almost, I don't want to say naive. I'm trying to think of the word, but we can be off guard because it's, we're just in the easy place almost.
Yeah.
We're comfortable,
We think that we're good. We think that everything's going to be okay. We think
we're safe. We think we're safe. We think that we are not actually, we forget we're in a spiritual battle. That's what I'm trying to say.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that. I love that you shared. I love Jesus. We were going to church. Mm-hmm. We were probably involved in church, would you say? Because
Mhm.
I think too, even people within the church think as long as, and some research does imply this, but as long as people are engaged at their church, all these percentages go down for divorce, for infidelity, for
Mhm.
porn addiction, for whatever, right? Which
Mhm.
there is truth there. Doesn't mean that it's gonna,
No.
it's not a safeguard for everything. So thank you for sharing that. And you mentioned somebody started giving me compliments and started paying attention to me.
Mhm.
So looking back, do you see a sort of snowball effect, and or how did those compliments, attention, how did that slowly morph into something bigger than that? And how did that change how you viewed John in your
I
marriage?
I think that it seemed innocent at first. I think that even though I think in the back of my mind I knew it wasn't right, it made me feel good, and it just accepting of the compliments just made me feel good, and it felt innocent, and I think that was my first mistake. That was my first mistake, is not just shutting it down.
Hmm.
Um,
How, can you give us what would that have looked like, do you think?
what
Like,
do you mean?
shutting it down, like, when you say, "I wish I would've that was my first mistake, I wish I would've shut it down." What would that if you what would that look like? Because there are women listening or watching who are engaged in that
Mhm.
process right now.
That would look like that would look like, "Please don't contact me again." That would look like, getting off email, because mine was through email, getting off email, um, blocking, telling my husband. That's what that would have looked like. If I would have shared that with him, which that's a really hard thing, like, that's easier said than done. If I would have just shared with him, "John, this person has reached out to me. I makes me feel really good, and I just wanted to let you know."
Mhm.
I wish
Yeah,
I would have done that. Does that answer your question?
it does, and I think that because again, affairs don't start in the bedroom, right? They start subtle
Oh,
and
yeah.
seemingly innocent, and I
Mhm.
think that's huge. And you just said straight up, I it's hard to do. It's hard to
Yeah.
do to come to your spouse and be honest about something like that.
Mhm.
I will say probably, would you agree with this? Because it does feel good, so you don't even want them to know. Because
Right.
you don't want it to stop. There's a part of you, right? That's
Mhm.
a theme I've heard of, like, if you the part of being in a committed adult Christian marriage is, or I would hope any commitment of that type is that even though you recognize something maybe feels good or you have a pull towards something, your commitment is bigger, your devotion toward Christ is bigger, and your spouse is bigger, and you're
Mhm.
willing to tell them the truth, even if it's going to change the pleasure that you're getting from XYZ, whatever that might be,
It's
right?
just
That's the hard thing
it
though.
takes will, like, it's like it's like if you're trying to cut out sugar and you see a cookie, it's like, "No, I'm not gonna have that cookie. I'm gonna have willpower." It's like even though it feels so good, it's like you have to take off the rose-colored lens. The outcome is not worth it. It's
Yeah.
just not worth it. And so it's
And
just
yeah. And the enemy makes you think that it is, right?
oh,
Take
yeah.
the bait, take the hook, take the hook.
Mhm. Mhm.
How did that change how you saw John? That process, what morphed, like, for you?
During that time or after?
Yeah. I would say during, like, because I've seen time and time again how being engaged in an emotional affair, any type of affair, changes how you view your own marriage.
Mhm. So, I felt like that the grass was greener on the other side of the fence, and, you know, Satan makes things appear beautiful. Like, you know, we you know, I think that when we think about what Satan looks like, we think that he just looks awful, and is red, and he has horns, and carries a pitchfork, when I don't believe that. I think that Satan is beautiful, and
Mm,
he makes things that are not beautiful appear beautiful. And so, um, I think I felt like that the grass was greener on the other side of the fence. Um, John's love language is not words of affirmation. His love language is, quality time. He shows me how he feels about me by he's it's just not words of affirmation. And so this person gave me words of affirmation,
mm,
and it felt good. And I felt like, oh, well, John really isn't really good at, giving me words of affirmation. Like, this person gives me like, oh, this person, maybe it's God's will for me to be with this person. And it was just like the devil, once I stepped over into that, betrayal and that, deceit, um, Satan had my mind,
mm.
and, um, I began to listen to the lies and believe them.
Wow.
Yeah, he's really
I'm
good at that.
I'm just taking notes. And so if I'm hearing you correctly, the way you saw John changed from what was once before all of this, like, he was great. He's your husband. He's
Yeah.
amazing. He's the father of your
Mhm,
kids. Like, things are
mhm.
good. He just got this promotion. We're in this new community, blah, 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 blah. It changed the way you saw him then from like, he's maybe not even the one for me. Someone
Yeah.
else, like, he can't ever love me or treat me or make me
Mhm,
feel like this other guy can.
mhm.
And so it made you see John as like not as appealing, attractive, the one that you even maybe wanted to be with, right? Would you
Yes.
say, looking back, would you say you wanted to fully be with this other man? Would you say?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's important for us to hear too,
Mhm.
because that is, I mean, of course, Satan had your mind. I
Yeah.
mean, thank you for saying that. Once I stepped over
Mhm.
into betrayal, Satan had my mind and I began to listen to the lies and believe them.
Yeah.
So of course you thought that. Like,
Mhm.
and we have to know that that is where he wants us. Like,
Mhm.
he is out to destroy any biblical family that
Yes. He hates
represents
family.
the gospel. Yes.
Yeah.
So of course he's going to get us to want to be exactly where you were.
Mhm.
Excuse me. So if we can switch gears and talk about the exposure, because this is a big part of anyone who's been walking through infidelity or betrayal. The exposure is a big part of the process. Specifically, I'm referring to whether the betrayer is the one that exposes it or if in some other way it becomes exposed. And depending on how it is exposed, can really add or not add to the processing and healing of it all. Can you talk to us about how it was exposed for you and John?
So, he suspected something was going on, and, uh, he just came out and asked me, and said, "Yes." He said, "Are you having an affair?" And I said, "Yes, I am." And I just wanna say that, I believe that there are some instances that, the victim is totally blindsided and has no clue. "Oh my gosh," like, but then I also think that I don't know if there are statistics or if this is even right, but I would say 8 times out of 10, you know, you're just in denial. You know that your spouse, there's something off, there's something, but you're in denial. And I think that he knew for Um, I don't know. I would say I think he knew for weeks, but
Mm.
he was in denial, and he asked me, and I just said, "Yep, I
Or
am."
what's unique about your story, Shannon, is so many times wives or husbands are suspicious and they do ask. They do even see some inklings or proof of it, but the other spouses,
Yeah.
they are denying that there is anything
Mhm.
going on, and they're
Mhm.
gaslighting the spouse, right?
Yeah.
Saying like, "You're
Yeah.
crazy," or "You're just being whatever." Um, so
Yeah.
then it makes the spouse question, "Well, oh, maybe I am just insecure. Maybe I am just
Mhm.
being controlling or whatever," you know? So I there's good reason for many spouses
Mhm.
to be in denial too,
Yeah.
because they've actually
Yes.
questioned their suspicion and their spouse has made them feel bad for asking and denied it. So I am grateful that that's ideal, right? A spouse like questions
Yeah.
and you are honest. That's I
Mhm.
would say rare in my
Mhm.
experience of working with so many couples. So
Yeah.
so that's good that he heard right from you. Um, how then what did it look like after that? After you were honest?
Um, gosh, Amanda. Um, it was hell, um, because I was ready to leave, Amanda. I was ready to go be with this other man, and, um, you know, John should have kicked me out, but he didn't. It was a really, really special, not special, but just a unique circumstance because we were actually on vacation when everything went down, and, um my girls we were on vacation, so John was off work, and this happened, like, in the middle of our vacation, and so we came home, and the girls went to stay with some friends, and we had, like I say this very carefully because I don't want it to appear that our marriage got fixed in 3 days and then everything was great, but we had those 3 days, 3 or 4 days, when it was just us right after that initial explosion, and, I you know, I was so oh my gosh, like, thinking back, I just wanna cry because I was so Satan just had such a hold over me, and when everything came to light, it was just like a blanket of sorrow, like I had a blanket of sorrow, overtake me, and I was thinking, like, literally, "What in the hell am I doing?" Like, I'm not saying that as a like, literally, "What in the hell am I doing? What
Yeah.
am I doing?" And even during that time, part of me still wanted to go and be with this other man, but then there was this it was like this pull, like, I was being pulled in this other direction. "I don't wanna leave my family. What am I doing? I love my husband." Like, it was just like it was like an inner battle of good and evil,
Yeah.
and John just really, like, this is one of the I think this is one of the most beautiful parts of our story is I remember sitting on the couch. We were sitting on the couch talking about things, and, um, he was just my husband is the type of person that if you wrong him, he's done, like,
Mm.
done. And so but he didn't kick me, like, it's normal. He would normally the man I knew would have kicked me out, but he didn't kick me out. He was just being very patient and tender with me, which is not his personality.
Mm.
So it was totally a God thing. But I asked him, I said, "Why are you being so tender? This is not who you are. Like, why are you treating me this way?" And I remember him, like, he starts crying, like, he starts
Mm.
sobbing. He's bent over because he's sobbing so much, and he looks up to me and he says, "Shannon, I because I love you." And that was the first, like, it was such a special moment for my entire life of ever being born, because I literally saw the face of Jesus
Mm,
letting me know, "I died for you. Like, I this is how much I love you. I love you. I died for you."
mm,
And it was just such a beautiful moment, and I think that both of us knew in that moment, we're gonna work on this. We're gonna work through this.
mm,
Um, so I'm not saying that, that was just our experience. You know, I think it's a unique situation. It's very individual when couples go through this. Like, sometimes the spouse just needs to be kicked out. Like,
mm,
so I'm not saying I want to be clear to your listeners that if the victim is listening and they're like, "Oh, I shouldn't kick him." I'm like, it's very individual, Amanda, and I'm not a therapist. You are, like, you're trained in that. So I just want to be clear that that's not what that was my
mm,
specific situation. And so, but it was a beautiful, beautiful thing. And it
mm.
didn't mean that our marriage, like, everything was just great unicorns afterwards. No, the hardest part for us was saying yes to working on our marriage. It would have been so much easier just to give up.
Yep, yep, yep.
So,
Um, Here's a question for you. I'm just taking a note before I forget to give up. Um, One of the things that when I meet with those who have been betrayed in their marriage, a hard part for them, obviously, oftentimes, is watching their spouse, the betrayer, walk through their own process of grieving the
mhm,
loss of
mhm,
the other relationship.
mhm,
What can you just speak honestly to those listening who have been on the side, they are the betrayed? Can you give them an honest look and maybe just a reality of what it's like to be the spouse who's grieving that, or like, because you have to do that on your own time. Like,
mhm,
what I often like, what we want to do when there's been a betrayal is we want the betrayer to immediately, like, fully cut off, which they should cut off in communication and all these other things, absolutely. But their emotion, their mind has been stuck on that other person, right? Like, there's a process of dying, like letting that relation finally, like closing the door to that. I don't know if
mhm,
you can speak to that or not, but there has to be, and I think this is what is important too for people who've been betrayed. If the betrayer is not willing to fully close that door, there cannot be. I just was talking
mhm,
this a couple weeks back when we opened this series up. I talked about that we cannot fully repair in marriage and restore in marriage if both parties are not willing to acknowledge and repent and turn from what has happened. And
mhm,
so when there has not been, if there is not a willing spouse who is closing every door, and even just in the process of that, like, even if if their heart has not fully, like, grieved that loss of relationship, which sounds terrible, but it is very real. um it's just, a marriage will not be able to fully repair.
right.
But what can, like, what, I don't know if you want to say anything to all that I just said.
Well, I think that, yes, the betrayer, when they have, chosen to I hate this kind of word, this verbiage, but chosen to, I guess, stay with their spouse, if their spouse will allow them to stay. Um, it's hard. There is a period of mourning, and it's like you have to turn your heart off and use your head and cut it off, like, cut it off. Um, even when your heart is saying, because your heart is failing you, like your heart in that moment is completely failing you, because that's not what God's will is for your life. That's not hope for your future. It's just not. No matter how we feel, how our heart feels at that moment, we have to use our head, turn off the heart, and cut it off. Even when you're you're mourning that, it's just doing it, just cutting it off. And I remember um a couple years ago, I was walking with a friend through this, and she had had an affair with somebody at her work. And I said, I'll just call her Susie. I said, Susie, you need to work somewhere else. Like, you need to quit and go work somewhere else. So it's just like it's serious. Like, it's, you can't just say, oh, it's, I'll just cut it off. And you have to take every avenue, if you're employed with this person, to go work somewhere else. Work in a different department, work in a place where you're never going to see this person. Like, if you happen to go to church together, well, you're probably going to need to go find another church.
Mhm.
So did that speak into what you were saying? Did that
Yeah,
answer
yeah.
your?
Yeah, and yes, and I'm thinking about the spouses who many spouses I, sit across from have the situation that's different than yours and John's, where the exposure was not the betrayer's choice. So the betrayal or infidelity came to light not on the betrayer's part.
Yeah.
So for some reason, it's come into the light and they weren't ready for that to
Mhm.
come into the light. And so oftentimes the betrayer has to come to reality
Yeah.
and like you said, have that internal battle. They weren't ready for it. They weren't anticipating that. And now they're having to go through this process that they didn't even want to go through of that pull and deciding what is reality here? What is true? What has been lies and all of
Yeah.
that. And so I guess yes, you answered the question and also just, be aware that if it is you listening, watching right now, if you are the one that is engaged in this process, you can bypass the hard of do not wait to let this come into the light in some odd fashion on some other it's going to come into the light. Number 1. I think too that that's a lie I hear often is that we can just keep on going in this
Mhm.
forever, possibly.
Mhm.
And there's going to be some fairy tale ending to all of this, you know, and every time. I've not seen one time ever where that is the case, where
Mm-mm.
it turns out just magically beautiful.
Mm-mm.
So if you are listening and watching and being like, there's something that I have been hiding, there's something that I've been keeping in the dark, we are pleading with you to seek the face of God in that
Yeah.
and decide to repent and
Mhm.
confess and
Mhm.
turn and do whatever it's going to take to repair and restore and pray that your spouse is willing to welcome that process with
Yeah.
you. Um, I want to talk to you, Shannon, about boundaries. What you mentioned a little bit that had you wish you would have just cut it off right away, right? Like you received some compliments, you received some attention, you wish if I would have just cut it off right then and there, we wouldn't have had this a part of our story. What boundaries, looking back, did you not have, and do you have now?
I well, I mentioned it before, like, I just felt like that I was immune to ever doing anything like this. Like, the Bible tells us to watch out, but in First Peter 5:8, Peter tells us, like, the devil is like a lion. He compares him to a lion who is looking around, seeking for someone that he can devour. And we have to be on guard. Like, that is a huge boundary that you can have. Like, be on guard. You're not perfect. You're human. You have weaknesses. You have temptations. We all have temptations. We all struggle with temptations. Like, who doesn't like for somebody to tell them that oh, you look beautiful. I've always thought you were beautiful. Like, who doesn't like that? So it's having those boundaries of knowing that the enemy is out to get you, and he will if you let him. And then just being open, like, um, a huge red flag, I've shared this so many times with people. If your spouse is trying to hide their phone from you, if they're if they have a passcode on their phone and you do not have the passcode, that is a huge red flag. I don't care what excuse they give you. There is something that they're hiding from you. If you
Yep.
can't if they're closing their computer every time you walk into a room, if you can't get into their email, I don't care if it's work related or not. Like, that is a huge, huge boundary that needs to be in place. Is first of all, you know, you're a team with your spouse. You're a team. You know everything about each other. Um, so I mean
Open
that's it.
access. Yeah. Open
Yes.
access to
Yes.
everything. Yep.
Yes. Yes. So um did that answer your question?
Yeah. Yeah, and yes, thank you for that, and you also mentioned even after the fact, okay, now this has come into the light. Well, now what is it gonna look like? You said, if you go to the same church, going to different church, like cutting.
Mhm.
And I will say too, oftentimes if your spouse, the one who has been the betrayer, if they are not willing to do whatever it takes and cut off, you know, hey, this is going to look like not ever going to that place again, changing jobs, changing churches, changing schools, whatever
Yeah.
that looks like for your family,
Mhm.
moving.
Mhm.
That's a big problem as well. That's a
Mhm.
huge red flag. Go to
Mhm.
counseling. If they won't go, you go.
Mhm.
Huge red flag.
Mhm.
Not okay. That's I would argue they are not fully repentant if they are not willing to do whatever it takes and do whatever makes
Yes,
you feel comfortable
100%.
and
Yes.
do whatever makes you, because again, just talked about this on the very first episode of this series. The There has to be a full, honest, consistent change in behavior. And anytime there's been a betrayal, there's been a breach of trust. And so
Yeah.
for trust to be rebuilt, it takes time and consistent changed behavior. And if the betrayer is not willing to engage in that process of consistent changed behavior, there will not be trust that is rebuilt. And intimacy is
Mhm.
trust. And so you can't have a marriage without trust. You
Mm-mm.
really can't. There's been a
Mm-mm.
breach. It's going to take time and proven changed behavior over time to rebuild that trust. And if they're not willing to do whatever it takes to rebuild trust, they're not fully invested in the marriage and they're not willing to do whatever it takes. It's a hard fact to face, but oftentimes I see that. And sometimes they just need to be told what it is we're saying right now.
Yeah.
And the betrayed needs to hear what we're saying right now too, because oftentimes they're thinking, oh, is it just me? Maybe the spouse is still gaslighting them and making them feel like
Yeah.
they're just being insecure or whatever. And that is
Yeah.
not the case
Yeah.
um, most times.
Mhm.
And I talk a little bit about that too, first episode of the series. So thank you for that. Boundaries. Um, how about this, Shannon? Anyone watching, listening right now, because also infidelity for you, Shannon, just to be clear, looked like an emotional affair, correct?
Yes.
Oftentimes I hear from either the wife or the husband, we didn't have an affair. It wasn't physical, right?
Mhm.
Even though here in A Wife Like Me, we talk about all the time, an affair can look like many things.
Mhm.
Any step outside of the marriage, your affection, your heart's affection,
Mhm.
turn towards someone else, there's infidelity there. Um,
Mhm.
oh man, you're going to hear an amazing episode about fidelity and what that looks like. And so,
I love
anyway,
that.
yes. Oh man, it's just a really eye-opening conversation. But so when we say an emotional affair is an affair, any type of I guess, what do you wanna say to that? And then what do you wanna for I'll let you start with that.
I would argue that anybody that says that, "Oh, well, it was just an emotional affair, like it was no big deal," I would argue that an emotional affair is worse than a physical affair.
Agreed.
It's
Yeah.
just, ugh, because your heart's involved and, what I said before, like, we think we need to follow our heart. That's not what the Bible says. That's not in the Bible to follow our heart.
Right.
Um, so yeah, I emotional affair is much worse.
Yeah. And I think the enemy wants you to think that just because nothing physical has happened,
Mhm.
you don't need to share it with your
It's
spouse. You don't.
okay.
Yep.
Yes,
Yep. And
100%.
yes. And so 1000% don't listen to that. That is junk. It is an affair and it is wrong and it is
Mhm.
never okay.
Never.
No matter what is going on in your marriage, also, an affair is never okay. There's
Yeah,
no excuse.
there is never a scenario that's okay with us sharing our heart and personal things with a member of somebody that's not our husband, of
Yep.
the opposite sex.
Yep. Yep.
It's just there's never a scenario where that's okay.
Yep.
It's just too dangerous.
Yeah. Shannon, speak to the woman or man listening or watching who is flirting with the idea of stepping outside of her marriage, flirting with the idea of being with someone else, or who already has crossed that line.
Well, when it comes to this, I'm pretty hardcore. Cut it off. Like, it's just not worth it. Um, the pain that comes along with that, um, no matter what your heart is telling you, cut it off. It's like it's just like I said before, like, Satan parades around like he's just beautiful. Like, he makes things look beautiful, and they're not. Um, and so I would just say bluntly and to the point, you gotta cut it off. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know what else, like, cut it off. It's just not worth it.
Yeah. I think I'm sensing that people listening or watching are thinking, I don't want to. And I know my heart is wrong. I know that I shouldn't be doing this. I know that my husband is the one that I should be with. And I want to say to you, no matter how you feel about your husband your wife or this other person, get on your face before God
Yeah,
and seek to honor God. Because if your heart is actually wanting Jesus and wants to honor him and wants what he wants, he's going to take care of this for you. You're going to want to do the right thing,
yeah,
but seek the Lord.
yeah,
Like, seek the Lord, turn everything off for a couple days, a week or something, and just seek him and see what he
mhm,
says about it. And you're going to want what he wants. Because
yeah,
sometimes I think our flesh, and I've seen this, our flesh is so strong that we don't want to cut it off. I hear what you're saying, Shannon. I know I should do that, Shannon, but I don't want to. I
mhm,
don't want to because it does feel so good. And I do think I'm supposed to be with this other person.
mhm.
And so I don't want to do it, you know?
Yeah, that scripture that says, if we delight ourselves with him, he'll give us the desires of our hearts. We have to act on delighting ourselves with him. So even though the desire of our heart at the moment might be this other person that's not our spouse, if we will do what you say, get on our face before the Lord and say, God, even if it's just simple words like, "God, change my heart." Change my heart. Give me the desires that you want for my life. Um, let me delight myself in you, Lord. He will give you the desires of your heart, and if your desire at the present moment is that other person, he will change that desire into your spouse.
Yeah.
I totally 100% believe that, but we
Yeah.
have to act. We have to delight ourselves in him.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
That's good, Shannon. Oh, would you pray for anyone watching, listening right now?
Mhm. Oh, Lord. First of all, we just want to thank you for your faithfulness. Thank you for loving us when we are not lovable, Lord. Thank you for dying on the cross for us. Thank you for your redemption. Thank you for your restoration, God. Lord, forever, whoever's watching this, God, no matter what they're going through, no matter if, um, Lord, they've been betrayed or they have betrayed or they're flirting with the idea of betraying, God, I just ask, Lord, that you rest upon their soul. Lord, I ask that you let them feel your presence. Let them feel your arms around them, God. I ask that you just whisper in their ear, God, how much you love them. Lord, I ask, Lord, that you convict their hearts. I ask that you remind them of who they are. Remind them that they are God's child, that they are yours, Lord. Remind them how much you love them, Jesus. Lord, remind them what you did on the cross for them, Lord. And I just thank you for your presence here right now. I thank you for your redemption that's always available to us, God, no matter what. I thank you for your restoration that's always available to us, no matter what, God. I thank you so much, Lord, for your presence. Thank you, God.
Oh, we didn't even talk about you and John today. You're doing well. You're happy. Your girls
Mhm.
are good. Your family is together and strong. And
Yeah. Amanda, just talking very briefly about restoration, because I know our time is up. Restoration for John and I took a really long time. I really don't want your audience just to think that it was just a one and done thing, and it took years for us to be fully restored, but it took a lot of work, and on both of our parts, it
yeah,
took a lot of work to get to where we are today. But
yeah,
God is faithful, and
yes,
He is true, and He is just, and He is, oh my goodness, the Lord is such a treasure for us, and just such a gift, and He's faithful. The Lord is faithful.
yeah, yeah. Behind the scenes, a lot of my week is spent just like this, like I said, with couples who are in crisis. And a majority, most of them have a type of betrayal that they're working through. And so many times, couples never come to this place of sitting in front of me. They call it quits. They decide to go with that other person or whatever that looks like. And so I don't get to meet with those couples, but I hear the stories every day, right? Um,
Mhm,
Many wives here, probably listening or watching, are those wives, some of them who wish that they had a story like yours and John's.
mhm,
Um, However, the couples that do come, that are fighting and are navigating the healing process and the process of repair, there's just such beauty in what
mhm,
God does there.
mhm,
And so it is possible, and it just requires honesty and humility
mhm.
and seeking the Lord, and the Lord will show up and do what only He can do. Um,
Well, and even Amanda, for those that their marriage that didn't get restored, like, God
yeah,
still has restoration for them.
yeah,
He knows the plans He has for them
yes,
to
yes,
give them a hope and a future, and
yes,
so there is restoration available for every single person no matter what.
yes, yes. Amen. Yes, yes. Oh, and I just again want to thank you, Shannon. Here's what's so hard about this topic, and my heart breaks. Uh, is so many men and women have a story,
Mm,
but they don't want to share it, you know? they don't feel comfortable. Sorry, I should have had a Kleenex, but um, they don't feel comfortable. You know, they live in a small community. They're
Yeah.
whatever, right?
Kids. Yeah.
Yep. The shame,
Mhm.
the judgment, the changes,
Mhm.
the whatever.
Yeah.
Um, and yet we have to hear stories like yours because they're powerful, they're real, they're challenging, convicting, they're sobering. And we have to wake up. We
Oh,
have
yeah.
to wake up.
Yeah.
The, uh, when you were talking earlier, I was thinking of basketball because we're in that season right now, and like playing defense versus offense. Like defense, you're like, whoa, 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 and you're not ready for it, and they're coming down the court strong, and you don't even know what kind of play where they're gonna go, and there's a screen set on you, like, whoa, what was that? And
Oh,
like
yeah.
all these things, it's going so fast. And but when you're on the offense, you are ready to take control of the court, and you know where you're going, who's moving where, what's gonna go on, and you are ready
Mhm.
to dominate on that side of the
Yes.
court. And
Yes.
so it's like, ladies, we have got to not be complacent in this.
No.
This is a spiritual battle. You, like you said, I can't even remember how you said it, but the enemy will destroy you if you
Oh,
allow
yeah.
him. And so it's not difficult. We see in Ephesians how we are to stand strong in him, but we just get comfy and
Yeah.
cozy and thinking everything is fine. And
Mm-mm.
so, oh, just thank you.
Every
Yeah.
Amanda, every day I walk we live on 13 acres, and every day well, if I say every day, I'd be lying. Almost every day that I can, I walk around my property and I pray Ephesians 5, the armor of God.
Nice.
I proclaim that over my husband, over my marriage, over my girls, and I pray that every day because
Yeah.
that's such a great analogy. When we are on the offense, ain't nothing coming through.
Yep.
And it's so important that we do that every single day, like, pray that every single day and stand firm, have
Yeah.
that firm foundation and, be on guard. Like,
Yeah.
it's a war zone out there. Like,
Yes.
it's a war zone, and we might be sitting pretty in our homes and, having, cute clothes to put on and, like, makeup and little hats and, the UGG slippers and all that cute stuff, but it's a war zone out there, and
Yep.
we have to face that and fight
Yep.
against it,
Yep.
like the Bible instructs us to. It's right there for us.
Yep. Yes. So open your Bibles, girls, and
Yes.
again,
Get
just
after it.
yes. Oh, thank you, Shannon, so much. I love you. We love you. And we adore your willingness to share. And thank you, John, for being willing. You've shared at your church. He is like, hey,
Mhm.
if this can help another couple, absolutely. And I just thank you both for that. I know and I can feel just that women needed this and or men. And just thank you.
Well,
We
thank
love
you
you,
for having
Shannon.
me. Yeah.
Absolutely. Everything is linked. Shannon's linked. The scriptures that we referenced are down below. And man, just if you have a story, if there's any way we can be praying for you, please let us know. If you need a Bible, let us know. Just comment below on YouTube or Facebook, or email us at info@awifelikeme.com. We'll get you a Bible. Um, we love you. We love you all. So thank
Yes.
you for being
Thank
with
you.
us.